What is copyright? If there is ever a right so confusing that it even confuses lawyers, the best of lawyers in the practice, it is copyright. It's one of the reasons why I usually advise that if you want to go for a trademark registration, try seeking out lawyers who have trademarked their own practice. If you ever want to get copyright advice, try seeking out lawyers who are practitioners of creativity. Intellectual property is more than merely theory. Intellectual property is much more than merely being academic and statutes. Intellectual property must be demonstrated. The only way we demonstrate intellectual property is by practicing. You have to be a practitioner in a discipline of creativity. If an individual does not practice creativity, then all you know is just academic and theory. You don't understand what creativity is. You don't understand where creativity begins and where creativity ends. Creativity begins at a point, and that point at which creativity begins is very important. It's the reason why I'm of this opinion that the greatest mistake in understanding copyright is going by the definition of copyright. Copyright is defined as the right that subsists. Now the question is, what does it mean to subsist? What does it mean to have a right? At what point are you subsisting, and at what point in the performance of your craft are you subsistent? Mark you, subsisting is from where we get the word subsistent farming. So do you need to be a farmer in order for you to unlock the subsisting element of your craft, of your practice? Subsist simply means to originate. Subsist means to begin. Subsist means the origin of something. So copyright is a right that originates at a point that an individual sets out to do something of physical nature. The moment you set out to write a song, at that very moment, copyright has kicked in. The moment you set out to write a script, a manuscript for a book, at that very point, copyright has kicked in. The moment you set out to sketch a fabric, at that very moment, a design for a fabric, at that very moment, copyright has kicked in. The moment you set out to put an architectural blueprint, at that very moment, copyright has kicked in. So it's very important for you to understand at what point is the point of departure between me using what already exists in the public domain and this is what I have originated. Allow me to give us 3 examples that majority of us will relate with that will help me characterize that definition. 1. In 1999, a gentleman called Cisco released a world hit thong song. In that song, Cisco beat a word that was invented by a gentleman called Ricky Martin. The word is living la vida loca. If you had bought that record, you'd witness that Cisco retained copyright over that body of work. But how is it that Ricky Martin came to collect on the publishing of that song? It's because in that entire song, the only thing that Cisco used that did not exist in public domain was Living La Vida Loca, because Living La Vida Loca was invented by Ricky Martin. It's very important, whether you're a musician, whether you're writing script, or you are an author, it's very important for you to understand what have I created. There are things that exist in public domain. They might be part of the body of your work. They don't donate to you copyright position. The second example. In the early 2000s, a group, a duo called Gidi Gidi Maji Maji released a smash hit. Previously, the producer of that song, the legendary Ted Josiah, was lamenting that he has not received even one coin of royalties from that song. Now here is the question. What did Ricky Martin know that Ted does not know even up to now? Giddy Giddy Maji Maji don't know. In the lyrics of that song we have, who can buogomi? Who can buogomi? Who can buogomi? Now let's analyze the lyrics. Who can? Those words already exist in the English language. So they don't own who can. The only word they own is buogomi. So today, if you are to have a conversation with Ted and ask, Ted, can you show me copyright position on that record? I'm sure Ted will be fast to show you there is this inscription. See, copyright is much more than merely that inscription. See, copyright is the awareness of what an individual has created. So in as much as Gidi Gidi Maji Maji and Ted Josiah can even show you a copyright certificate, that copyright certificate is in itself empty because that copyright certificate does not reinforce a creation. Copyright is what you have created, not what you have used in what already exists in the public domain. The third example, in the mid-2000s, early 2010, a group also did a gospel smash hit, Bazokizo. Kabit kaki come through Bazokizo. Bazokizo. Nani Bazokizo. That song. Now, if we are to analyze Bazokizo and put the position of Bazokizo, Bazokizo, unfortunately enough, also went the same route that Gidi Gidi Maji Maji went. Bazokizo did not know what they had created. In that song, Kabit Kaki Come Through was not their invention. Kabit Kaki Come Through was not their creation. But in that song, they created Bazokizo. Now here is the challenge. What is Bazokizo? Bazokizo is not defined. So to that extent, Bazokizo is an empty copyright position. So these young men can show you all the copyright certificates they can, but those copyright certificates do not reinforce a copyright position. So it's very important, whatever you're doing, you could be a chef, you could be a lawyer, an author, whatever you're doing, it's important for you to understand at what point can I identify the appearance of copyright. Copyright makes appearance. So at this point, allow me to give us 5 important lessons that I want you to take from this video on copyright. These are 5 things that even your lawyer will not tell you. 1. Copyright is not a blanket right. Copyright must be isolated. That simply means that in a body of work, you extract your creation in that body of work. That which you have created is what you can restrict and reinforce a copyright position on. There is a book that was written by a gentleman called Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. In that book, Robert owns copyright. But the copyright that Robert owns is only restricted to what Robert created. Robert is a CPA, he's an accountant, and in that book, Robert created the cash flow quadrant. That is what Robert owns in copyright. Copyright, whether you are an architect, whether you are a programmer, whether you are a musician, whether you are a designer, whether you are a painter, whether you are a chef, copyright must be extracted. This is one of those things that makes majority of people not to employ their copyright, because we imagine that copyright is a blanket right, that copyright protects everything. Copyright must be isolated. The second lesson, copyright is a private right. The individual must be able to police their own copyright. Copyright is not governmental. Copyright is not owned by the state. It's one of those things that I feel it's a waste or is the misuse of the police service whenever we work with policemen to police our own copyright. This is not a communist state. This is a capitalistic state, a capitalistic system. What that simply means, you as an individual, it's your duty to police your own copyright. It is your duty to observe when someone has created something and they have beaten what you have done. Allow me to give us an example. There's a gentleman called Judge. Judge is one half of the duo, Black Duo. In the early 2000s, Judge released a song called Kakitu ni real, kakitu ni real, juu wenyewe mi nakufeel, kakitu si real, kakitu si real, juu wenyewe mi sikufeel. That track was played once on Kiss. Kiss used to have a segment on Sundays that they would play local music. That song was played once and was never played before again, because that song used the instrumentals of Ice Cube. How did they even know that someone in Kenya had infringed on their instrumental? Someone downloaded that instrumental and they did that song. Copyright is a private responsibility. Copyright is a private facility. Copyright is upon you as an individual to police that copyright. And that policing begins from you identifying what you have created. The third lesson that I want you to get from this is copyright must be valued. Copyright, for it to be copyright, copyright must have value. So the individual carrying copyright must be aware of what are the value drivers in that copyright that will unlock an economy. If you have not unlocked an economy, it doesn't matter how many copyright certificates you have, that thing is not property. It only becomes property at the point whereby you can identify value drivers in that body of work. This is something that is conspicuously neglected all over the African continent. We don't know how to value copyright. We don't know how to value creativity. We don't know how to value the body of work that we are involved in. Copyright must be valued. All intellectual property must be valued. The fourth lesson that I want you to take from here is copyright kicks in the very moment you set out to do anything of physical nature. Copyright is not static. Copyright is not cast on stone. Copyright kicks in the very moment you set out to begin a work of physical nature. As an individual, I want you from today to be aware of your environment and to be aware of the labor and the work that you take part in. Copyright kicks in at the very moment that you set out to work. This distinguishes copyright from trademark, because trademark, you need another person to acknowledge that work. You need government to acknowledge that work. Patent, you need government to acknowledge that work. That is not the same with copyright. Copyright is restricted in your awareness. The person limiting you from employing your copyright is not Kekobo. The person limiting you from employing your own copyright is not MCSK. It's not CAMP, it's not PRISC. The person limiting you is yourself. So copyright makes appearance. That is something very important that you need to understand. You can have copyright certificate and that copyright certificate to be empty. Every individual needs to be aware of that. Copyright makes appearance. The last one, copyright, like all other forms of intellectual property, is monopolistic in nature. What that means is copyright places you at a very enviable position. When an individual is aware of what they have created and what they have brought to the marketplace, that individual possesses a very enviable position that determines productivity. Your copyright is a form of labor. Your copyright is a factor of production if you know how to employ it. And that factor of production prohibits everyone else from exploiting what you have used. These 5 important lessons are very important because they are going to enable you from today approach your career, approach your craft from a position of empowerment. Without empowerment, you're really operating from a deficient and inadequate place. My name is Ogwang. I am the principal at Franchise and Licensing Institute. All we do here is to help people identify their diverse forms of intellectual property. Copyright is just one among the different facilities of intellectual property. Did you know that intellectual property has 16 distinct facilities? So that means that today, according to the level of your awareness, you can expand your craft, you can expand your practice in 16 different directions. On the 7th of September 2024, we are launching the first class we are calling School of Copyright. School of Copyright is intended to build capacity in you that you can be aware as a practitioner in whichever field. Every individual has a form or another of copyright. The form of copyright that exists on an architect is different from that exists on a tailor, a carpenter, on that which exists on a chef. Each and every person, as long as they are not idle and they are not lazy, they have forms of copyright. In this school of copyright, I want to show you the incredible things you can do from your copyright. Whether you are a film producer, you are a thespian, an author, whether you are a coach, whatever you're doing, as long as you are doing something of physical nature, I want you to take opportunity of this school of copyright and register today. We are having a 32% discount on the overall price, and this one is for a limited duration until the 15th of August. This class kicks on the 7th of September. If you've reached this far, kindly consider rewarding me with a like, a share, and let's interact in the comment section below. My name is Ogwang, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, don't forget that the most powerful resource in your control today is a copyright that you probably are not even aware of. God bless, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, bye.